The night on Orion's Edge station was quiet, only the distant hum of reactors and the occasional hiss of cooling vents filled the air, the kind of silence that pressed down heavy. After long days of work, Jake Lawson wiped grease from his hands and tossed the rag onto the counter. His repair bay smelled of burned circuits and old oil, the usual scent of a small mechanic's life. He was tired, his eyes heavy, after fixing yet another old freighter for a captain who probably would not pay on time. Jake was used to being invisible, just another man fixing ships at the edge of the galaxy, a place where no one asked questions and no one gave answers. He preferred it that way, or at least he told himself he did, until that night when he heard a sound that was not the hiss of vents or the hum of engines. It was faint at first, a whisper so soft he thought it was in his head. He froze, turning slowly, his eyes sweeping across the dim shadows of the bay. The whisper came again, weak, broken, almost desperate. Just some leftovers, please. Jake's blood chilled. The voice was not human, it was deeper, heavier, with a strange echo. He stepped closer toward the far corner, where half-dismantled engines lay stacked like metal bones. His flashlight beam trembled across the wall, and then he saw it, a massive shape curled against the cold floor, scales cracked like shattered glass, dim light flickering inside them, a creature out of legend, a dragon, its great body trembling, its eyes half closed, glowing faint like dying stars. It lifted its head with great effort, and the whisper came again through lips split and bleeding, just some leftovers, please. Jake staggered back, his heart slamming against his ribs. Dragons were stories, rumors, something people spoke of in hushed tones while drinking too much. They were supposed to be extinct, wiped out centuries ago by hunters and wars, yet here one was in his shop, asking him for scraps. He wanted to run, he wanted to slam the doors and call security, but his feet refused to move. The creature's eyes locked on him, not with rage, not with hunger, but with something far worse, sorrow. Jake swallowed hard, his voice breaking. You can speak. The dragon's head dipped slightly, its voice inside his mind more than in his ears, broken and frail. I can whisper once, maybe twice more, than silence, but please, food, anything. Jake glanced at the small ration box on his counter, half a loaf of bread, cold soup from earlier, nothing more. He thought of reports, bounty hunters searching for rare creature stations raided for harboring alien fugitives. If he helped this thing, he was finished, yet if he didn't, it would die here alone in the corner of his bay. His chest tightened. He remembered the times he himself had gone hungry back when he was a boy on Earth, stealing scraps from dumpsters. The memory cut deep. He looked back at the dragon, and in that moment its eyes seemed to show the same kind of hunger, the same kind of loneliness. He took the ration box and walked toward it, every step heavy, every nerve screaming to turn away. The dragon's nostrils flared at the scent, its cracked jaw opening as it swallowed the food with slow, painful bites. When it finished, it let out a sound, not quite a sigh, not quite a growl, and whispered, you should not have done this. Jake frowned, confused. Why not? I just gave you food. The dragon's dim eyes burned faint blue. They will come now, they always come the moment kindness is given. The bay lights flickered overhead, a low hum vibrating through the floor. Jake turned sharply through the cracked hangar window. He saw lights sweeping across the station's exterior, shadows moving like predators in the dark. His heart sank. The dragon lowered its head, curling tighter against the wall, its voice fading. You fed me, mechanic. Now your world will change forever. Jake's hands trembled as the bay lights flickered again, shadows crawling across the walls like silent hunters. He looked at the dragon huddled against the floor, its huge frame shaking with every labored breath, the ration crumbs still clinging to its cracked jaw. The creature's eyes glowed faint, but steady, watching him with an expression he could not name, half warning, half sorrow. Jake's throat was dry, his voice little more than a whisper. What do you mean they will come? The dragon's gaze drifted toward the hangar doors, its voice pressed into his skull, not through sound, but thought, soft, heavy, and unshakable. Because I am not meant to survive, and now you have given me strength. They will sense it. They will track it, and they will not forgive you. Jake's stomach turned, his instincts screamed to push the dragon out, to close the doors, to pretend none of this ever happened, but his feet refused to move. The hum outside deepened, turning into a pulse of vibration that rattled the bolts of the station's ceiling. He stepped toward the window, and saw them, sleek black drones gliding along the outer hull, their red eyes glowing like burning coals, scanning every crevice of the station, searching. Jake felt sweat bead along his forehead. He turned back to the dragon, desperate, whispering, why are they after you? What are you carrying? The dragon's head shifted weakly, its scales reflecting the dying light, a secret old as the stars, a fire your kind has forgotten, a fire they fear. Jake clenched his fists, frustration and fear twisting his chest. He was just a mechanic. He fixed ships, patched wires, welded metal. He was not a soldier, not a spy, not someone who dealt with secrets older than stars. Yet here he was, hiding a starving dragon in his shop while drones prowled outside like wolves. The dragon shuddered, curling its wings tight against its body. Its voice cracked again, you should hide me, but you must not speak a word, not to them, not to anyone. Promise me. Jake's lips parted. He wanted to refuse, he wanted to shout at this thing that had dragged him into danger with a single whisper, but the look in its eyes pinned him, still a look not of power but of desperation. Slowly, he nodded his chest, aching eye. Promise. The dragon's head lowered, as if in relief. The hum outside grew sharper. Brighter red light swept across the bay window, a drone hovering just beyond the glass scanning the interior. Jake's heart hammered, his knees weak. He backed toward the shadows. The dragon stilled, its body sinking deeper into darkness. The drone lingered, its crimson eye burning. Then another shape appeared outside, larger, heavier claws gripping the hull. Hunters, not just machines. Jake held his breath, every nerve screaming in. Silence. The dragon whispered one final time. You chose mercy, mechanic. Now mercy will choose you. The sound of metal against metal echoed through the hangar doors. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, they were coming inside. The hangar doors groaned as locks disengaged one by one, the sound echoing like the slow beat of a war drum. Jake's chest tightened, sweat running cold down his spine. The dragon pressed itself deeper into the shadows, its cracked wings folding close, its eyes dimming until they were almost invisible. Jake could hear the heavy clang of boots on metal as figures stepped inside, their outlines tall, armored heads low like predators, their voices sharp, mechanical, cutting through the silence. Search everything, the scent is here. Jake ducked behind a stack of engine parts, his breath shallow, his hands slick with grease and fear. He dared a glance between the crates, and saw them, 3 hunters, their armor black and smooth, their masks glowing with lines of red. They carried weapons that hummed with contained energy. Each step they took made the floor vibrate. The nearest one swept a scanner across the bay, its red beam slicing through the dark, crawling over walls, floors, broken ships, and finally sliding dangerously close to the corner where the dragon lay. The creature did not move, its breath so faint it could have been stone. Jake bit the inside of his cheek, fighting the urge to shout to distract them, but one wrong move, and he would join whatever fate awaited the dragon. One of the hunters stopped, his mask tilting toward the shadows, his voice low. There it is. The others moved in, weapons rising. Jake's heart slammed into his ribs, panic burning his mind. Without thinking, he grabbed a wrench from the floor and hurled it across the bay. It crashed against a toolbox with a sharp metallic scream. The hunters snapped toward the noise, weapons flashing. One rushed to investigate, the others fanning out. The dragon's eye flickered at Jake's choice, a faint light, almost like gratitude. Jake held his breath as one hunter passed, so close he could smell the cold metal of its armor, his body rigid, his heartbeat a roar in his ears. Finally, after what felt like forever, the leader growled, nothing here. It must have moved on. Alert the fleet, we return with reinforcements. The hunters stalked back toward the doors, their heavy boots fading until silence returned, only the faint hum of the station filling the air. Jake sagged against the wall, his chest heaving. The dragon shifted slightly, its voice inside his mind like a tired sigh. You risked yourself for me. Why? Jake wiped sweat from his face, his throat tight. I don't know, maybe because you asked for food like anyone else. The dragon's eyes glowed faintly, brighter, almost like a smile of light flickering through pain. Then you are bound to this now, Jake Lawson. They will return, and when they do you must decide if you stand with me or betray me. Jake stared at the hangar doors, still trembling from their departure, his stomach sinking. He had no idea what he had just done, but deep inside he knew nothing in his quiet, forgotten life would ever be simple again. Jake did not sleep that night. The hum of the station felt louder than ever, every flicker of light, every shadow crawling across the bay wall made his nerves burn. He sat on a crate staring at the dragon huddled in the corner, its body massive but broken, its breaths shallow yet steady, its eyes faintly glowing like embers refusing to die. Finally, he whispered, voice low and raw, you need to tell me what you really are, because if hunters are willing to tear apart a station for you, then this is bigger than food or mercy. The dragon lifted its head, slow, deliberate, every movement heavy with pain. When it spoke, the sound was not only in Jake's ears but in his chest, in his bones. I am the last of the guardians of the flame, a power older than empires, older than your species, a fire carried through blood and scale to keep balance across the stars. Jake blinked, shaking his head, struggling to take in the words guardians, fire, balance. It all sounded like something from one of the old stories pilots told while drunk, but there was no laughter in the dragon's tone, only weight and sorrow. They hunted us for centuries because they fear what we protect, because they crave it for themselves, and now I am the last. Jake swallowed hard, his mouth dry, his voice breaking. What does that have to do with me? I am just a mechanic. I fix broken ships. I am no guardian. The dragon's eyes glowed brighter for a heartbeat. No, you are not, but you chose mercy when you could have chosen silence. That choice has bound you to my fate, and mine to yours. Jake shook his head, standing pacing across the bay. This is insane. I should have called security. I should have thrown you out the moment you spoke. The dragon did not move, only whispered, and if you had I would be dead, and the flame with me. Jake froze, the words cutting deep his stomach, twisting his voice harsh. You said they will come back. How long do we have? The dragon's wings shifted, scales scraping against the floor. Not long. The first hunters were scouts, the next will come with fleets. You cannot outrun them forever. Jake rubbed his face, His mind spinning. His life had been simple, broken ships, bad pay, lonely nights. Now suddenly, he was tied to an ancient secret, hunted by powers older than Earth itself. He felt the weight pressing down, crushing him, yet, when he looked at the dragon again, weak and wounded, asking only for scraps, something inside him hardened. He muttered, bitter but certain, "Then I guess I don't have a choice, do I?" The dragon lowered its head, eyes closing for a moment in what almost seemed like respect. "No. You do have a choice, mechanic, and what you choose will decide if your people rise or fall." Jake stared at the floor, his hands, fists trembling. He had no idea what path he was about to walk, but he knew the moment he fed this creature his world had shifted, and there was no way back. Jake spent the next hours pacing the bay, his mind a storm of questions, fear, and anger. He kept glancing at the dragon, still slumped in the corner, its wings twitching as though even in rest it battled unseen pain. The silence between them grew heavy, until Jake finally snapped, his voice sharp and tired. "If you are carrying this so-called flame, why did you crawl into my hangar begging for scraps? Why not burn your way out, fight them off?" The dragon's eyes cracked open, dim but steady. Its voice came soft, like embers in ash, "Because the flame is not a weapon, it is life, and life weakens when hunted too long. I cannot fight, not yet, but I can pass it on." Jake froze, the words hitting him like a blow. His throat tightened. "Pass it on? What do you mean?" The dragon shifted, its weight, scales grinding against metal, its massive body shaking as if even speaking drained what little strength it had. "You asked why you, why a mechanic? Because you showed mercy when none was owed. Mercy is the vessel. Flame does not rest in blades or armies, it rests in choices." Jake felt his chest tighten. He shook his head, backing up. "No, no, I am not carrying anything. I am not chosen. I fix engines, I scrape by. I am no savior." The dragon's gaze held his steady, unyielding. "That is what all guardians once said, until the moment came." Jake clenched his fists, anger bubbling. "I don't want this. I don't want hunters, drones, fleets tearing apart my life because of some ancient fire." He stopped, his voice breaking quieter. "But I couldn't let you die either." The dragon's faint glow flickered, as if acknowledging the truth in his words. Jake turned away, running a hand through his hair. The bay lights above flickered again, a low rumble vibrating through the walls. He stiffened, his breath catching. The dragon's eyes narrowed, their glow sharp. They returned. Jake darted to the window, peering out. His stomach dropped as shadows moved along the hull again. Not just drones this time, larger ships, sleek black vessels with spines glowing crimson, closing in like vultures around prey. His pulse spiked, his voice urgent. "If they find you here, they'll burn this whole station." The dragon's voice pressed hard into his skull. "Then you must choose, Jake Lawson. Hide me, and be hunted, or stand with me, and be more than hunted." Jake stared at the ships outside, his chest a knot of fear and fury. His quiet life was gone, stripped away the moment he heard that whisper. Now the galaxy itself seemed to close in on him. He turned back to the dragon, its faint eyes burning like stars, refusing to die, and he knew the next choice he made would decide not only if he lived, but if humanity itself would ever be the same. The rumble grew louder until it felt like the entire station was shaking apart. Alarms flickered to life across the base screens, flashing warnings of breach proximity and unauthorized docking. Jake's breath came fast, shallow, panic clawing up his throat. He backed toward the dragon, his voice sharp, barely controlled. "They're here, they're docking." The dragon shifted, its wings weak but deliberate, its voice echoing steady inside his mind. "You cannot fight them with tools or walls. You must decide now. Will you run, or will you rise?" Jake looked at the door where the first hunters had entered hours ago. He could already hear the metallic clang of approaching boots, the sound of weapons charging, the glow of red bleeding under the crack of the doors. He wanted to run, every muscle in his body screaming to abandon this bay, to slip into the endless tunnels of the station, disappear, pretend none of this had ever touched his life. But when he looked back at the dragon, broken, beaten but unyielding, he felt something heavier than fear, a spark of defiance burning deep inside him. His voice cracked rough. "I don't know how to rise. I'm just one man." The dragon's gaze pinned him, as if peeling away all doubt. "One man with choice can change more than an army." Jake's heart slammed against his chest as the doors blew inward with a roar. Armored hunters storming inside, their weapons glowing crimson light flooding the bay. They moved like shadows with blades of energy cutting through the dark. One raised its weapon straight toward the dragon. Jake's body moved before his mind caught up. He lunged, grabbing a plasma cutter from his workbench and slashing it toward the nearest hunter. The weapon hissed, white-hot sparks spraying. The hunter recoiled, its armor scorched. Another turned, its mask snapping toward Jake, firing a burst of energy that seared past his shoulder, slamming into the wall behind him. The blast shook the entire bay. Jake ducked behind a crate, his pulse a thunderstorm, his lungs burning as he shouted back toward the dragon, "What do I do? How do I stop them?" The dragon's mind pressed harder against his, a voice like fire in his skull. "Take the flame." Jake blinked, his throat dry, even as plasma fire lit up the bay around him. "Take it? What does that mean?" The dragon's head lifted, light blooming, faint but growing across its chest, scales shifting like molten glass. "I can give it to you, but once given there is no return. Your life will not be your own. Jake's hands trembled as hunters closed in their boots, clanging, his heart racing louder than the gunfire. His voice rose shaking, but certain. If it's the only way, then do it. The dragon's chest glowed brighter, the bay filling with a light that pushed against the dark. Hunters faltered, their masks snapping toward the radiance. Jake stumbled forward, blinded by the brilliance, his body pulled by a force he couldn't resist, and as the dragon exhaled, a wave of burning light poured into him. He felt his veins ignite, his breath catch, his vision explode into stars, his scream swallowed by fire that was not fire, life that was not his own yet now burned within him. The hunters froze, their weapons lowering, not in confusion, but in fear. One voice, mechanical and shaking, he carries it, the flame. Jake collapsed to his knees, gasping, every nerve alive, his eyes glowing faint like the dragon's had been, and in that moment, everything changed. Jake's body shook as if every cell inside him had been set ablaze, his vision split between the cold metal of the bay and something else, something vast, endless. He saw stars burning, then fading, black holes devouring light, galaxies swirling like sparks in a cosmic forge. His scream turned into a roar that wasn't human, his chest heaving as the glow dimmed, settling into him not as fire but as a pulse, steady, fierce, alive. The hunters stepped back, their weapons trembling in their hands, even through their masks fear radiated off them. One hissed a word like a curse. Guardian. Jake lifted his head, his breath ragged, his eyes burning with faint light that did not fade. The plasma cutter still clutched in his hand glowed brighter now, as though infused with the same power running through his veins. The hunters regrouped, three closing in, their leader barking commands in a harsh metallic tongue. Jake's fear was still there, deep and loud, but something stronger rose above it, not courage, not rage, but resolve. The dragon's voice filled his chest. You are not alone, let it guide you. Jake staggered to his feet, the nearest hunter lunged, its blade flashing crimson. He raised the cutter, and the world seemed to slow. The glow from his veins surged into the tool, and when he struck, sparks erupted, not metal against metal, but something deeper. The hunter's blade shattered, the force of the impact sending the armored figure sprawling against the wall. Another fired a blast, but Jake raised his hand. Instinctively, light flared around his arm, the energy burst, dissolving into nothing before it touched him. He gasped, the power wild, terrifying, yet it answered him, as if it had always been waiting. The hunters faltered, regrouping, one shouted retreat, but the leader snapped back, no, he must die now. They charged together, blades and fire tearing through the bay. Jake braced his body, screaming from the strain, yet the flame surged higher, brighter. Each strike he blocked, each blast he turned back with raw instinct, until the hunters were forced back, weapons cracking under the weight of something they could not understand. One fell broken, another staggered, leaking sparks, but still they came. Jake's chest burned, his knees weak, but his grip held, his voice a raw snarl. I didn't ask for this, but I won't run from it. The dragon behind him raised its head, eyes faintly glowing, watching like a proud shadow, and in the silence between blasts Jake realized the hunters were no longer looking at him as prey but as the very thing they had been sent to destroy, the last guardian, the carrier of the flame. The bay was smoke and ruin, the air heavy with sparks and the stench of scorched metal. Jake stood trembling, his arms weak, his chest burning with the weight of the flame. The hunters that remained pulled back, their leader dragging one of the broken soldiers to its feet, their helmets turned toward Jake, as if staring at something more terrifying than the dragon itself. One hissed into a calm, and the red glow on their armor pulsed darker, a signal, a warning before retreating into the shadows of the hall. Jake's knees almost buckled, but the dragon's voice steadied him, not soft this time but edged with urgency. They will return not as hunters but as armies, and when they do the stars themselves will burn if you are not ready. Jake clenched his fists, his eyes still glowing faint. He stared at the shattered doors where the hunters had fled, his voice raw, bitter. Why me? Why give me this curse? The dragon lifted its head fully now, its strength faint but its presence heavy. Because you asked for nothing, and yet gave mercy, because power must rest in those who do not crave it. Jake's throat tightened, he wanted to scream that he wasn't ready, that he never would be, but before the words could rise a distant tremor shook the bay, a low thunder rolling through the metal bones of the station. He staggered to the viewport, his stomach dropping as massive shadows moved against the stars. Not 3 ships, not 10, but fleets, black vessels stretching across the void, their crimson spines pulsing like veins of some vast beast. Closing in, the dragon's eyes locked with his, its whisper sharp. The galaxy will know the flame lives, they will come for you, some to kill you, others to follow you, and humanity will no longer be hidden in the dark. Jake's heart pounded, the ordinary mechanic, who once begged for scraps of sleep and quiet, now standing at the edge of war, the flame burning inside him like a second heartbeat. He pressed his hand to the glass, staring at the endless swarm of enemy ships, his voice a whisper carried on trembling breath, then I guess the real fight hasn't even begun.